Welcome to a journey through the entirety of Greek mythology, where every god and hero left their mark on the world today. Let's begin this epic story from the beginning. Above you there is nothing. No stars, no sky, not even darkness. Just a silence so total, so suffocating, it presses against your chest like a leaden fog. And then something stirs. Chaos. Not a being, not a place. More like a pulse in the void. It doesn't roar or flash, it just is. A vast, swirling nothingness. Cold and hot, empty and full, alive and dead all at once. And you, if you're mortal, may not survive what awaits at the end of this story. So before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And if you're watching in the middle of the night or on a sunny afternoon, comment your location and local time. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's begin our journey tonight. You're standing in the middle of nothing, and it's terrifying. No gods, no rules. Just chaos, the first state of existence, if existence is even the right word. You can't touch it, but you're drowning in it. There's no direction here because there's no up or down, no texture, no time. Just motion without shape. And somehow from that shifting soup of uncertainty, things begin to form. First comes Nyx night, long, shadowy, and laced with secrets. Then Erebus, the darkness between worlds. Together they whisper more names into being. Ether, Hemera, and others you'll meet later. But the one who matters now is Gaia. She doesn't arrive with thunder. She grows a self-made earth, wide-hipped and ancient, forming crust from chaos, mountains from mist. With no parents, no partner, Gaia births the shape of the world itself, and suddenly there's land beneath your feet. If this sounds made up, well, it is. But not to the ancient Greeks. To them, Gaia wasn't an idea. She was the ground. When they touched soil, they were touching her skin. Temples to her were rare, but altars were everywhere. Because you didn't build Gaia a house. She was the house. And here's a strange fact. Some pre-Socratic philosophers believed chaos wasn't disorder at all, but a gap. A yawning space between things. Not evil, just separation. Scholars still debate whether the Greeks meant chaos as randomness or as distance. Either way, it made room for gods to grow. So that's where we begin. In a place with no beginning. From a formless breath, Gaia becomes the first to draw herself together. She is not born, she awakens. And with her awakening, something irreversible happens. The myth begins. Because now there is place. And where there is place, stories follow. You might wonder, how does a story survive from a time before writing? Well, that's the power of myth. It doesn't need paper, it just needs fear, firelight, and someone to whisper it into the dark.
You feel the ground beneath you breathing, slow, steady, ancient. Gaia has awakened, and she's alone, but not lonely. Her body stretches wide across the cosmos, cradling valleys, swelling into mountains, and rippling with forests not yet born. She is Earth before maps, before names. She doesn't walk, she is the walking. And with every shift of her soil, something stirs in the sky above. But there's no sky yet. So Gaia, in a moment of unimaginable creation, brings forth Uranus, the heavens, the starry dome that arches above her like a crown of fire. He is not built from stone or wind, but from possibility. He is her son. He is her lover. And, eventually, he will be her jailer. Yes, it's weird, but this is mythology. Logic checks out for lunch early here. Gaia and Uranus meet not with conversation, but convergence. He wraps her in himself, cloaking her in night and stars, and together they create life. Not just any life, primordial life. The first generation of Titans are born. Huge, powerful beings with names like Oceanus, Hyperion, Thea, and Cronus. These are the ancestors of nearly every god and monster you've ever heard of. They're basically the dysfunctional grandparents of Olympus. But not all of Gaia's children are golden-skinned titans. She also births the Cyclopes, one-eyed smiths with lightning in their blood, and the Hecatoncheires, creatures with 100 arms and 50 heads each. Don't try to picture that, you'll only get a headache. And here's your strange fact of the section. In some traditions, Uranus isn't even a personality. He's just the ceiling, a lid over the world, which makes the eventual conflict with Gaia less a breakup and more of a renovation project. Still, Uranus sees these children not as miracles, but as threats. They're too powerful, too different. So he stuffs the monstrous ones back inside Gaia's womb, forcing her to bear the unbearable, literally. The earth groans, mountains shift, storms bloom from her skin. You might think, why would he do that? But remember, Uranus is the first sky. He's obsessed with order. Anything that doesn't fit his view of perfection gets buried. Out of sight, out of stars. Scholars still debate whether this story is a metaphor for the transition from matriarchal earth worship to patriarchal sky god systems in early societies. Was Uranus suppressing Gaia because new beliefs were rising, or was it just a really awkward family dynamic? Honestly, probably both. Meanwhile, you're standing here, on Gaia's back, feeling the tension building beneath your feet. Her children rage in the dark. Her love curdles into pain, and somewhere deep in her stone heart, a plan begins to form. Because Gaia, while vast and gentle, is not without teeth. You lie back, and the sky above you tightens like a fist. Uranus stretches across the heavens, not soft and starry like you'd hope, but crushing, ever-present, inescapable. He doesn't just float above Gaia, he presses down on her, every night, every day, constant. This isn't love, it's control. Uranus, first of the sky gods, has one overwhelming fear: his children. Not the ones who shimmer with divinity like the Titans, but the others, the rough, jagged, too much ones. The Cyclopes, the Hecatoncheires, the creatures born from chaos and cradled in Gaia's belly. So he does what tyrants do best. He eliminates the threat. One by one, he forces them back inside the earth. Imagine that, not metaphorically, but viscerally. Gaia, a living world swollen with stone and fury, churning with children who were never allowed to be. You can feel it under your hands now, the tremble of mountains holding back screams. Volcanoes twitch, roots rot, even time seems to resist moving forward. Meanwhile, Uranus returns each day with the same terrible ritual: descend, embrace, suppress. He isn't the god of stars, he's the lid on a coffin. And Gaia? She endures. For centuries, maybe millennia, until the pressure builds too high. She begins to seek out one of her Titan sons, someone brave enough, angry enough, hungry enough to fight the sky itself. Cronus volunteers. He's not the eldest, not the strongest, but he listens. And most importantly, he carries doubt. Doubt that the world must be this way, that Uranus should rule forever. That fear must be swallowed, not spat out. So Gaia crafts him a blade. Not of bronze or gold, but of flint. Jagged, gray, sharp like unfinished truth. It's a sickle. Not for wheat. For war. Here's the odd fact for this part. That sickle becomes one of mythology's most recycled weapons. Later, it's linked to the scythe of death itself. The idea that cutting time, or cutting fate, requires a curve. Scholars still debate whether Cronus is a hero or just another tyrant in training. Is he freeing his siblings or just replacing one horror with another? Mythology doesn't always reward you with clear answers. It prefers echoes. So the plan is set. Next time Uranus descends to meet Gaia, Cronus will be waiting, hidden, quiet, still as stone. And when the moment comes, he'll rise and cut. No thunder, no army, just one swing that splits the sky open and sends stars tumbling like teeth. But that moment hasn't happened yet. You're still here, beneath Uranus, and the wind is still holding its breath.
The sky doesn't bleed, but it does scream.
You don't hear thunder. You hear shattering, like glass cracking across the entire ceiling of the cosmos. Uranus falls back, gasping not air, but starlight, as the sickle bites. Cronus doesn't hesitate. He doesn't flinch. He cuts. And from that one terrible act, everything begins. Uranus isn't just wounded, he's undone. From the gash in the heavens, blood rains down, thick red-black droplets falling not onto dirt, but into possibility. Wherever they land, life mutates. From blood on the earth spring the Tyrannies, the Furies, vengeful spirits with snakes for hair and justice in their claws. They won't forget this. From sea foam mixing with divine essence, another shape swirls. Aphrodite, born not from a womb, but from a wound. Desire itself rises, laughing. You weren't ready for that, were you? Cronus, now standing tall with the sky behind him, becomes ruler of everything. And he wastes no time doing what every new ruler does, rewriting the rules. He releases the Titans from Gaia's depths and builds a golden age of prosperity. Crops bloom. Mortals, still half-imagined, whisper in the grass. For a while, everything is soft, but power remembers. And Gaia? She doesn't forget either. Because not all her children were freed. Cronus, despite his promise, still fears the monstrous. He keeps the Hecatoncheires and Cyclopes locked away deep in the belly of Tartarus, a prison that makes hell look like a waiting room. The cycle continues. Suppression wears new armor, but the screams are the same. Strange fact of the night, in Hesiod's version, Tartarus isn't just a place, it's a primordial deity, a sentient pit. So imagine Cronus locking his siblings inside a god made of prison. You might be thinking, didn't Cronus learn anything from Uranus? He did. He learned to strike first, because prophecy, slippery as sea mist, reaches his ears. One of your own children will overthrow you. Familiar? It should be. Myth loves a loop. And fear loves a throne. So Cronus, the titan who slayed the sky, begins to devour his future, literally. One by one, his children are swallowed whole the moment they take their first breath. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, all vanish down the same divine throat. Scholars still debate whether this is symbolic of patriarchal lineage trying to consume the next generation, or just a really disturbing bedtime story. Either way, one child survives. Because Gaia, again, has had enough. And so has Rhea. She's not just the mother of gods, she's the one who dares to lie to power's face. But that's for the next part. Right now, you're standing at the edge of a world that
The nursery is silent. Not because the babies aren't crying, but because they're gone, swallowed. Cronus sits on his throne, golden and grim, pretending he doesn't hear the echo of their hearts beating inside his own stomach. He smiles for the Titans, rules for the poets, and dines on paranoia. But Rhea? She hears every heartbeat. You're standing beside her now, hands trembling, belly full again. She's pregnant with her 6th child, and she knows the ending if she does nothing. She's seen it 5 times before. Birth, smile, gulp, silence. Not this time. She seeks out Gaia, not as goddess to goddess, but as daughter to mother, woman to woman. And together they scheme. Not with thunder, with silence. When the time comes, Rhea delivers her baby in secret, a boy. Wrinkled, squirming, screaming, not in fear, but in defiance. She names him Zeus, then wraps a stone in swaddling cloth, hands it to Cronus, and watches him devour it without suspicion. And here's your odd fact. In some versions, Cronus burps contentedly afterward, which might make him the first god with indigestion. Meanwhile, baby Zeus is whisked away to a cave on the island of Crete. No royal nursery, no lullabies.
just a dark cavern dripping with echoes. He's nursed by Amalthea, a divine goat, and protected by the Curites, warrior spirits who clash their spears and shields to drown out his cries. Sound becomes armor. Silence becomes death. Scholars still debate whether this myth reflects real Minoan rituals, where caves were sacred and goats held divine status. Some even say the Curites were once dancers in a warlike trance, stomping out rhythm as worship. But back to the cave. You sit with Zeus as he grows. Fast. Gods don't follow baby steps. He learns to speak, to fight, to plan, and most importantly, to wait. While Cronus rules with a smile and a sword, Zeus waits in the dark, sharpening his storm. And here's where the cycle starts to fray. Because unlike Uranus, Cronus knows fear. And unlike Cronus, Zeus knows how to organize. The world above him spins with golden days and swallowed legacies. The Titans bask in power they think eternal. But in the shadows, under roots and rock, a storm is building. And you feel the temperature drop. The goat bleats once. The cave shifts. The child who will one day hurl thunder is listening, watching, waiting. And the gods, for the first time, begin to hope. You wake to the sound of hooves and thunder, not from the sky, but from within the earth. Something ancient is stirring, and it's not Zeus. It's his plan. The time has come. He's grown now. No longer a child in a cave, but a god in full. Lightning dances on his fingertips like pets. His voice echoes like distant storms. And he's ready, not just to confront Cronus, but to unmake him. But overthrowing a Titan requires more than brute force, so Zeus does something that sets him apart from every god before. He forms alliances. Step 1. Poison. Rhea prepares a drink laced with magic, and Zeus, in disguise, offers it to Cronus. You imagine the scene: father and son at a feast, the air thick with fate. Cronus drinks, and then, everything he ever swallowed comes hurling out. It's disgusting. It's divine. One by one, Zeus's siblings emerge, alive, whole, furious. Hestia gasps. Poseidon shakes. Hades stares into the abyss and it blinks first. But 5 angry gods aren't enough. Zeus knows it. So he heads deeper, into Tartarus, the living prison, and frees the long-forgotten, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, the very creatures Uranus and Cronus both feared. Strange fact, the Cyclopes are not just monsters. They're craftsmen. In gratitude, they forge Zeus his thunderbolt, Poseidon his trident, and Hades his helmet of invisibility. These aren't just weapons, they're identity, made manifest. Scholars still debate whether these items symbolize elemental domains, sky, sea, underworld, or represent older cult symbols passed into Olympian myth. Either way, they're iconic now. Trident emoji, anyone? So now, the war begins. 10 years. 10 cosmic years. A war not waged with armies but with earthquakes and tidal waves, screams and silence. On one side, the Titans, ancient, proud, led by Cronus and his loyal brothers. On the other, Zeus and his newly liberated siblings, fueled by vengeance and vision. You're not watching a battle. You're inside it. Mountains are hurled like stones. The sky rips open. The sea swallows forests whole. Time itself begins to fracture under the weight of war. And here's something they don't teach you in school. While the gods fought up high, humanity, still primitive, barely standing, watched shadows flicker across the sky and told stories about thunder. These myths weren't just explanations. They were coping mechanisms. Eventually, the tide turns. The Hecatoncheires, 100 armed hurricanes of destruction, tip the balance. The Titans fall. One by one, they're cast into Tartarus, deeper than memory.
You open your eyes, and the world is reorganizing. The air tastes different, charged, watchful. You're standing at the edge of a new cosmos. The Titans are gone, locked away beneath layers of stone and shame. Zeus now sits on the highest peak of Mount Olympus, not just as a conqueror, but as an architect of fate. But don't relax yet. Victory has a way of rotting quickly in the hands of the powerful. This is the beginning of what mortals will call the Golden Age. But among the gods, it's the age of redefinition. Who rules what? Who gets which domain? What does it even mean to be a god now? Zeus divides the universe like a carefully sliced pie. The sky for himself, the sea for Poseidon, the underworld for Hades. It seems fair, until you remember that Gaia, the earth, wasn't consulted. Again, she's still there, always, watching. And she doesn't like how this is going. But first, let's meet the new Olympian board of directors. Hera, goddess of marriage and long-suffering revenge. Demeter, goddess of harvest and seasonal guilt trips. Hestia, goddess of the hearth and the underrated virtue of minding your own business. Together with their brothers, they start reshaping not just heaven, but humanity. You see temples begin to rise, built not just for shelter, but for sacrifice. Flame and blood, offered to the sky, to the sea, to whatever will keep the crops growing and the storms delayed. Religion doesn't emerge gently, it's demanded. Strange fact, ancient Greeks believed the gods were not omniscient. You had to get their attention, which, for Zeus, often meant loud prayers, or louder disasters. But peace, in myth, is just a breath between storms. Because even as Olympus gleams, Gaia grows restless again. She remembers the betrayal of Uranus, the imprisonment of her monstrous children, and now, the arrogance of these new gods, ignoring her like an old myth. So she births one final rebellion. Typhon. Not a titan, not a cyclops, something worse. He's described in ancient texts as taller than mountains, with serpents for legs, wings like hurricanes, and a voice of every animal screaming at once. Cute. Scholars still debate whether Typhon was a holdover from pre-Hellenic monster myths, or a personification of volcanic terror. Either way, he's not here to talk. When Typhon rises, even Zeus flinches. You hear the crack of Olympus trembling, not in defeat, but in realization. That power isn't permanent. That control invites chaos. Again. The battle is terrifying. No allies. No clever plans. Just lightning versus monstrosity. The sky literally falls. And for a moment, it seems the gods might be overthrown by the very earth. You blink, and the world has settled. Sort of. The thunder's quieter now. The titans are gone, Typhon is buried, and the gods have moved in like new homeowners renovating the ruins of an old dynasty. Olympus hums with divine politics, family drama, and the quiet dread of prophecy. But in the middle of all this, one figure moves without thunder or fire. Her name is Rhea, and if this were a fair world, she'd have statues taller than Zeus. Because Rhea is the hinge of history. Without her, there's no Olympian victory, no Zeus, no lightning, no lore. But now that her children rule, she steps aside. That's what goddesses do, apparently. Save everything, then fade politely. Still, not everyone's forgotten. You sit beside her as she watches a new generation of gods rise. Athena, born from Zeus's skull. Apollo and Artemis, twins of light and shadow. Hermes, who could probably steal your sandals while narrating a poem about it. Ares, Dionysus, Hephaestus, all storming into existence like uninvited guests at a divine party. And then there's Hera, queen of Olympus, sister and wife to Zeus, goddess of marriage, yes, but also of resistance. She sees the cracks already forming in this new order. Zeus's wandering eye,
the arrogance of immortals, the mortals themselves daring to build stories of their own. Because mortals are now watching, and worse, they're dreaming. Here's your odd fact of the night. In some fragments, Hera was once considered a more ancient deity than Zeus, possibly even worshipped as a standalone sky goddess before the patriarchy caught a lightning bolt. Scholars still debate whether Hera's myths of jealousy are remnants of older power struggles, rewritten to serve Olympian narratives. But we're not here for gossip. We're here for the next warning. Because while Zeus celebrates victory, another whisper rides the wind. One day, you too will be overthrown by your child. Sound familiar? It should. Prophecy isn't a fortune cookie in Greek myth. It's a curse dressed as advice. And Zeus listens. He tries to dodge fate the same way Cronus did. Control the narrative, bend the rules, swallow danger before it grows teeth. But the future doesn't care about tradition. You can almost hear Gaia laughing. Meanwhile, Hades rules the underworld in solemn silence. Poseidon stirs tsunamis with every flick of his trident. Mortals light their first real fires and give names to the gods who already know theirs. The world begins, truly begins. And so do the stakes. And Rhea? She watches from the edges of myth. She's no longer center stage. But she's still there, in the hearths, in the stones, in the lullabies gods never remember writing. You realize the war was never about good versus evil. It was about balance. And balance is hard when everyone wants the sky.
The sky feels heavier now, not with storm, but with memory. You're no longer watching the rise of gods. You're witnessing their reflection, etched into marble, whispered in temples, painted on urns that tremble after centuries underground. The Titanomachy is legend, the Olympians reign, and yet, something in the wind still murmurs of change. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades rule their realms with authority, but also with history stitched into every gesture. Every thunderbolt Zeus hurls carries the echo of his father's sickle. Every wave Poseidon crashes remembers the silence of Oceanus. Every shadow Hades walks through is filled with the screams of titans still chained in Tartarus. The past doesn't rest here. It paces. Still, Olympus thrives. Mortals begin to build civilization around these gods, not just temples, but entire cities. Athens for Athena, Delphi for Apollo, Eleusis for Demeter. Sacrifice becomes ritual. Story becomes scripture. The gods become brands. Here's a curious fact. Many ancient Greeks believed their gods could be bribed. Offer the right goat, say the right prayer, and even Zeus might give you rain or mercy. The divine wasn't moral. It was transactional. And Zeus? He watches. Always. From the cloud line, from carved altars, from the silence between thunderclaps. He may be king, but the world he rules is restless. Because humans, tiny, fragile, short-lived humans, are doing something dangerous. They're thinking. They're building philosophy. They're questioning fate. They're wondering why the gods quarrel like siblings in a shared bathroom. And in some corner of this growing world, someone's about to suggest the unthinkable. Maybe the gods aren't perfect. Maybe they're like us. Scholars still debate whether this shift, from myth to philosophy, was fueled by disillusionment or enlightenment. Did the Greeks outgrow their gods, or did their gods evolve with them, becoming archetypes instead of idols? You sit quietly as the Olympians continue their endless dramas. Zeus and Hera's battles of betrayal and dignity, Athena guiding cities to wisdom, Dionysus blurring the line between ecstasy and chaos. Each story both divine and achingly human. And beneath it all, Gaia listens. Because the earth never left. She's always been here, beneath thrones and temples, beneath myth and marble. She remembers chaos. She remembers Uranus, Cronus, Zeus. She remembers what it feels like to hold gods inside her, screaming. And if you listen closely now, you can hear something older than prophecy, older than power, older than story itself, the sound of the myth. Exhaling. The war is over.
The reign has begun. But the question remains, who tells the next tale? Because even gods are only safe until someone dares to dream beyond them.
The sky feels heavier now, not with storm, but with memory. You're no longer watching the rise of gods. You're witnessing their reflection, etched into marble, whispered in temples, painted on urns that tremble after centuries underground. The Titanomachy is legend, the Olympians reign, and yet, something in the wind still murmurs of change. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades rule their realms with authority, but also with history stitched into every gesture. Every thunderbolt Zeus hurls carries the echo of his father's sickle. Every wave Poseidon crashes remembers the silence of Oceanus. Every shadow Hades walks through is filled with the screams of titans still chained in Tartarus. The past doesn't rest here, it paces. Still, Olympus thrives. Mortals begin to build civilization around these gods, not just temples, but entire cities. Athens for Athena, Delphi for Apollo, Eleusis for Demeter. Sacrifice becomes ritual. Story becomes scripture. The gods become brands. Here's a curious fact. Many ancient Greeks believed their gods could be bribed. Offer the right goat, say the right prayer, and even Zeus might give you rain or mercy. The divine wasn't moral. It was transactional. And Zeus? He watches. Always. From the cloud line, from carved altars, from the silence between thunderclaps. He may be king, but the world he rules is restless. Because humans, tiny, fragile, short-lived humans, are doing something dangerous. They're thinking. They're building philosophy. They're questioning fate. They're wondering why the gods quarrel like siblings in a shared bathroom. And in some corner of this growing world, someone's about to suggest the unthinkable. Maybe the gods aren't perfect. Maybe they're like us. Scholars still debate whether this shift, from myth to philosophy, was fueled by disillusionment or enlightenment. Did the Greeks outgrow their gods, or did their gods evolve with them, becoming archetypes instead of idols? You sit quietly as the Olympians continue their endless dramas. Zeus and Hera's battles of betrayal and dignity, Athena guiding cities to wisdom, Dionysus blurring the line between ecstasy and chaos. Each story both divine and achingly human. And beneath it all, Gaia listens. Because the earth never left. She's always been here, beneath thrones and temples, beneath myth and marble. She remembers chaos. She remembers Uranus, Cronus, Zeus. She remembers what it feels like to hold gods inside her, screaming. And if you listen closely now, you can hear something older than prophecy, older than power, older than story itself, the sound of the myth. Exhaling. The war is over. The reign has begun. But the question remains, who tells the next tale? Because even gods are only safe until someone dares to dream beyond them. And now, the storm is past. The gods sleep. For now. Their thrones, silhouetted against a night sky that remembers everything. Every betrayal. Every birth. Every whisper spoken between thunderclaps. You sit in the quiet, wrapped not in fear, but in understanding. The story didn't end. It changed forms. It became echo, firelight, memory. You might dream of Zeus's thunder, or of Gaia's ancient breath rising through the soil beneath your feet. Or perhaps you'll forget it all. Until one day, a wind brushes past you and speaks a name you've never said aloud. This is how myths survive. Not in stone, but in silence. Now, rest. Let the gods keep watch for a while.